Hello everyone, and welcome back to Over Yandere. So this past week I've been fixing up some of the pixel art here in the freeroam, and I'd like to show you what some of that looks like now. But first, I wanted to mention something. So most of the pixel art here I've done myself, but some of it I needed some help with. So I got some help from someone else, and I thought the pixel art looked really good. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but this pixel art was made in a small part with AI, and when I found that out, I scheduled a art touch-up into the development cycle or the game roadmap, which is where we are today. And along the way, I received some feedback in a YouTube comment saying that, maybe I should try and make things look a little more pixelated, which I thought made sense. So this art touch-up stage or week had two goals. One is to kind of do over the AI generated assets so that everything in the game is something I can say I either made myself or was made completely by a person. And the other was to make things look a little better, maybe a little more pixelated. So first off, we have the pavement here. This looks a little bit different from what it used to be. I think it looks kind of cool. Another is the brick wall. So this is a bit different now. Looks a little bit more bricky, doesn't look as faded as before, but still serves its purpose. You can't get out. And then I'd like to show you around some of the buildings as well. So I've redone the outside of the warehouse, I've redone the crates, and also the floor now has a little bit more texture to it. It's not just this flat brown, it looks a little bit more lived in and used. So that's what this space looks like now after the refactor. Another change was the library. So now the floor looks a bit different. It was previously using the warehouse floor, so the same tile as the warehouse floor. So that's now changed, so now it looks a little bit different, a little bit more like a used, well-worn wood floor. But the rest of the library is pretty much the same. Another change I should mention is the garbage cans, so they now look a little bit more like this. Before they were a little more gray, now they're a bit more green. And the music store. The music store is probably one of the bigger changes because I redid the floor tile and this outer tile. For the inner tile, it doesn't look too different from what it previously was, but I just closed things in, made it look a little bit more, like a bit of a grated catwalk kind of thing. I added a little bit of texture on the floor, as well as the outer wall no longer looks like an X on a red background. It's now a bit more like brick. There's a little bit of texturing there too. So I think this looks a lot better than before, and I can definitely understand the feedback I got previously about making it look a bit more pixelated or just a bit different from what it was, which was kind of just a colored block with a very, very simple pattern on it. So I can understand that. And then another change, which I was really worried about, was actually the grass. So the grass was one of those assets I had to kind of rework, and I was kind of worried about reworking it because the grass was already covering about 90% of the free roam. So, if I made a change that didn't look good, I was going to have to see it everywhere. But I've reworked it now. I don't think it looks too bad. Another change is this outer wall for the pottery shop, as well as the pottery wheels are a bit different. And the one other change that I think is a good reflection of the better pixelated style, is this pathway. Before, I had a little bit of pebbling or whatever here to try and make it not look like a flat peach color, but I don't think it really succeeded. You couldn't really see it, it didn't stand out. But now, after the improvements, I think it looks a lot better now. You can see a lot more of what should be kind of a gravelly sand, maybe a couple pebbles in there. I think this looks a lot better. And now let me talk about the one bug that I discovered while doing this phase of the work. So this was just a pixel art. You might be thinking, how are there bugs in pixel art? Well, it's not that, but while I was testing it, I discovered something. So I've set the grass so that when you're next to the outer wall, you can't see anything you're not supposed to. But I forgot I added the minimap feature, which lets you see a much wider distance. So I've now fixed it, except for that little bit of gray area on the right I apparently missed. I'll touch that up in a second. But I've now fixed it so that when you press the minimap, you still cannot see what you're not supposed to. But I wanted to mention that because I had a little bit of a scare involving that. So I first added a whole bunch of grass outside of the bounds to fix that, but I guess I added a bit too much and it caused some real performance problems for the game. You know, like you could be walking and then there would be lag and then you would have to wait a few seconds and then you would see yourself walking again, something like that. So really bad performance issues. But even worse than that, it caused performance issues with the editor itself. So I basically couldn't even work on the game because when I opened up the game in the editor would become unresponsive and it would just crash. So that was a bit of a problem and I was really worried, did I just nuke the project? But no, I've had something set up called version control. So basically every so often, like at the end of every week, I save my progress in a way I can restore. So I restored the last progress I had with keeping the new art, the new pixel art I've made. And so I lost a few hours of work and not the whole project or a few months. So that was a real lifesaver. I've changed the pharmacy as well a little bit. There's a little bit more texture to the floor now. The cash register is a little bit different, but outside of that, not too much. So for next week, the plan is to do some typo checking. So essentially proofreading of the dialogues I have in the visual novel section. And in one of the last videos where the footage was of the dialogues, I actually noticed a few typos or issues there. So I've made a note of those. I'm going to go back, I'm going to look at those, and I'll be able to show you a bit more of that visual novel side of the game as well next week, and that will round out February. And then March is essentially the month I'm going to be very thoroughly testing the game, so there's a couple different branching paths for the endings, things like that. So I'm going to be going through and making sure I check all of those, make sure you can get all of them fine, no issues, no bugs. There's also a few different question sets. I'm going to make sure those are all working, there's no little dialogue issues in there, things like that. And I should also hopefully have some more art for you by the end of next week. And yeah, that's everything that's been going on with the project. So a few scares, a lot of improvements, and I think things are coming along pretty good. So let me know what you think. I'm going to keep going. Thank you for watching.